My name is Astra Sullivan.
I'm 34.
The last time my father deigned to speak to me, he declared I'd amount to nothing more than a glorified bureaucrat, stifled by government red tape instead of achieving true academic brilliance. That was 4 years ago at a family reunion, when he informed the assembled relatives that his disappointing daughter had squandered her potential by pursuing global security strategy instead of the pure scientific research he'd envisioned for her. What he didn't comprehend, what none of them did, was that just weeks prior, I'd been the principal architect in a series of highly classified operational blueprints designed to revolutionize international intelligence collection. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The urgent notification arrived late one morning while I was meticulously analyzing geopolitical threat models within my secure analysis chamber at a clandestine facility. My cousin Maeve's voice was taut, threaded with barely suppressed hysteria. Astra, you must come home now. What's happened? It's your father. He's been detained. The word struck me like a blast of Arctic air. My father, retired General Duncan Sterling, the man who had tirelessly molded my early life with pronouncements on discipline and intellectual rigor. The man who had subtly disowned me for choosing applied intelligence over a revered academic career was now being held in a federal detention center in a stark border city, accused of high treason and conspiracy to commit espionage. That's inconceivable, I stated, though even as the denial left my lips, disparate fragments of recent history began to coalesce into a chilling mosaic. His sudden, unexplained affluence post-retirement, the newly acquired international properties, the priceless art collection, the frequent, uncharacteristic trips to nations that should have triggered alarms for any former military leader. Astra, you have to help him. You work for the government, don't you? Can't you activate some connections? I closed my eyes. If only she truly understood the kind of connections I could activate. I'll be there by tomorrow. The long-haul flight to the border city granted me 12 hours for introspection, 12 hours to revisit the deeply entrenched reasons for my prolonged estrangement. My father had been a decorated intellectual, a figure of immense admiration during my formative years. But when I chose to pursue his footsteps into a field that demanded rigorous analytical thought and strategic foresight, albeit in a different branch of national service, he perceived it as a profound betrayal of his grand vision for my life. You're trivializing your intellect, he proclaimed when I graduated at the top of my class from a prestigious security academy. Intelligence work. That's for those who lack the courage for truly groundbreaking research. When I achieved early command at 26, he offered a perfunctory nod. When I received my first commendation for operations so sensitive I couldn't even hint at them, he deftly steered the conversation away. And when I finally earned my senior rank and attempted to share my quiet pride with him, he regarded me with an expression bordering on disdain. 30 years old, and still merely executing directives. When will you mature and carve your own path? That had been our last genuine exchange before the family reunion incident. He'd introduced me to distant kin as my daughter, who's still trying to find her place in some obscure government department. When I attempted to gently correct him, to explain that my role was far from obscure, he dismissed me with palpable embarrassment. Astra, please. We all know you're not precisely shattering any glass ceilings over there. If only he had known the truth. 10 months earlier, I had been elevated to principal strategist and placed in charge of a multinational task force responsible for global counterintelligence operations spanning 7 continents. If only he had known that leaders of allied nations routinely sought my counsel for strategic briefings, that 4-star generals deferred to my analytical conclusions, that my security clearance was so restrictive most of my own colleagues couldn't even verify my operational base. But I had never divulged these details, partly due to stringent classification requirements, but primarily because his persistent dismissiveness had carved such a deep wound that I had ceased striving for his recognition. The federal justice complex in the border city was a testament to institutional authority, all polished granite and soaring glass, and the palpable weight of due process. I had navigated similar structures countless times before, but always as the individual presenting complex analyses, never as someone whose personal narrative had dramatically intersected with the machinery of federal prosecution. My family had congregated in the reception area like survivors of a cataclysmic event. Maeve was there with her spouse, along with my Aunt Corelia, my Uncle Roland, and a scattering of cousins I barely recognized. They looked up as I entered, and I discerned the familiar blend of desperate hope and ingrained condescension in their gazes. Astra. Maeve rushed forward. Thank the heavens you're here. Did you bring someone from your agency? Someone who possesses influence. I brought myself. Uncle Roland stepped forward, his expression stern. My dear, no offense intended, but we require someone with genuine authority here. Someone who can tangibly intervene. Such as whom? Such as someone who understands the inner workings of the system, someone with formidable connections. You stated you work in intelligence, did you not? Can you contact your superior? I almost permitted myself a wry smile. Allow me to ascertain the situation first. The truth was, I had already initiated a series of secure communications during my layover. Not to my superior. I effectively was the superior within my operational division, but to high-level colleagues at Justice, at State, at agencies whose very names were forbidden in unsecure conversations. My father's case was already on my secure terminal in Maryland, had been for 9 months, and I had been the one to personally authorize the multi-agency surveillance that ultimately led to his apprehension. The irony was so acrid. It burned on my tongue. We waited for 4 agonizing hours. 4 hours of my family pacing, speculating, and occasionally remembering to inquire about my little government job with the distracted politeness reserved for discussing a distant acquaintance's trivial hobby. Maeve's husband constantly checked his phone, muttering about legal fees. Aunt Coralia clutched her rosary beads, murmuring prayers. Uncle Roland vehemently declared to anyone who would listen that this was all a monstrous error, that Duncan Sterling was a patriot who had dedicated his life to his nation. He would never betray America. He insisted this was political persecution. I remained silent, but I knew with absolute certainty the contrary. The evidence was overwhelming. Meticulously traced financial transfers, intercepted encrypted communications, documented meetings with foreign agents, highly classified documents retrieved from his private study. My father hadn't merely betrayed his country. He had executed it sloppily, with an arrogant disregard, as if his former prestige alone would somehow render him untouchable. At 4:30, a federal prosecutor named Julietta Ward emerged from the elevator and scanned the reception area until her sharp gaze located me. Strategist Sullivan, may I speak with you privately? My family tensed. Maeve gripped my arm. Should we accompany you? No, Ward stated firmly. Just Strategist Sullivan. We proceeded to a small conference room where Ward closed the door and turned to face me with an unreadable expression. This is highly unusual, she began, but given your unique position, I wish to converse with you before the arraignment. My position? Strategist Sullivan, please. We both comprehend why you are truly present. The title resonated within the small room like a sonic impact. I had not been addressed by my operational rank in my family's presence since my promotion 10 months prior. Classified protocols meant I was still officially designated by a more junior title for most administrative purposes, but my strategic authority extended far beyond what most individuals could possibly conceive. What information do you require? I inquired. Were you aware of your father's illicit activities prior to the investigation? Not until 9 months ago, when my division flagged the financial anomalies. I formally recused myself from the operational oversight once his identity was confirmed. But you did not issue a warning. It was not a question. We both knew I could not have warned him, even if the thought had remotely crossed my mind. But the deeper truth was far more intricate than that. No, I stated quietly. I did not issue a warning. Ward nodded and opened a file. The evidence is irrefutable. Financial ledgers show payments totaling over $2.3 million across 18 months. We possess photographic evidence, recorded conversations, and classified materials recovered from his residence. He will be incarcerated, strategist. The only variable is the duration. What are you implying? Nothing. I am informing you that in approximately 20 minutes, your father will be arraigned on charges that carry a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Your family will be devastated, and you will be confronted with a choice. Reveal your true identity, or permit them to continue believing you are merely some low-level government employee who could not intervene even if she wished. I met her gaze. Are you deriving satisfaction from this? Frankly, a measure of it. Your father has spent the last 3 days informing everyone who would listen that his daughter works for the government and will rectify this entire debacle. He appears to believe you are some kind of administrative assistant or data analyst who can make a few phone calls and resolve everything. He has no comprehension that you are the very individual who authorized the multi-agency investigation that led directly to his apprehension. The words felt like a physical blow to my abdomen, but I maintained a stoic expression. Is there anything else? Only this. When we took him into custody, he inquired if we had contacted his daughter. He said, and I quote, "Astra might not be much, but she works for you people. She can explain this is all a grave error." I closed my eyes and felt something profound within me finally fracture. When we returned to the reception area, my family swarmed me with desperate inquiries. What did she communicate?
Can you assist?
Do you possess the right connections? I observed their faces, hopeful, terrified, utterly oblivious that the person they were imploring for aid was the same individual who had meticulously constructed the case against my father. The evidence is exceedingly grave, I stated carefully. But you can undertake something, can't you? Maeve pressed, her voice urgent. You can contact someone influential. The arraignment will commence in a few minutes. You should brace yourselves.
Avec le Roland stepped closer.
Astra, I understand you're merely a... What exactly do you do? Something with technical systems. Something like that, correct? Well, I know you're not high-ranking or anything, but surely someone you collaborate with possesses true connections. Real influence. The courtroom was densely packed. Federal espionage cases are an anomaly in a border city, and the local media had seized upon the unfolding drama. I sat in the rear row with my family, observing as my father was escorted in, clad in an orange jumpsuit and heavy shackles. He appeared significantly older than I remembered, diminished. When his eyes located mine in the gallery, he managed a faint smile, a weak, desperate expression that simultaneously wrenched my heart and ignited a cold fury within me. The charges were formally read: conspiracy against the state, willful transmission of classified intelligence to a foreign government, breach of national trust under the Espionage Act. Each count carried potential decades of imprisonment. My father's defense attorney entered a plea of not guilty and then petitioned for bail consideration, citing his distinguished military service and strong community ties. Your Honor, the prosecutor stated, rising to respond, Mr. Sterling presents an extreme flight risk. The government possesses compelling evidence that he maintains contacts in multiple foreign nations and access to resources that could facilitate his immediate disappearance. We formally request he be held without bail. I will hear arguments, the judge pronounced. For 20 minutes, the attorneys debated my father's character, his exemplary service record, his ties to the community. His attorney portrayed him as an unblemished patriot who had devoted his entire existence to his country. The prosecutor depicted him as a calculating traitor who had systematically sold out that very nation for immense personal gain. Neither of them mentioned that his daughter, the architect of his exposure, was seated merely 30 feet away. Finally, the judge called for a brief recess to deliberate on the bail request. As the courtroom began to slowly empty, my family huddled around me. This is preposterous, Maeve whispered, her voice trembling.
He's not a spy.
He's not a traitor. The evidence, I began. The evidence is unequivocally wrong, Uncle Roland snapped. And you should be actively intervening instead of simply sitting here. Contact your supervisor. Contact someone with genuine authority. This is your father. Do you truly believe I haven't attempted to? The fabrication came easily, practiced over years of protecting secrets. Then endeavor more strenuously. For heaven's sake, Astra, what is the utility of working for the government if you cannot even assist your own family? I looked at him, truly looked at him, and perceived 34 years of dismissed achievements, unacknowledged sacrifices, and casual condescension crystallized in his impatient expression. He was addressing me with the same tone my father always had, the same tone my family always had, as if I were a child playing dress-up in an adult's profession. You are correct, I stated quietly. Allow me to place a call. I walked to the courthouse steps and retrieved my secure comm device. Not to initiate a call, I had already made all the pertinent communications, but to review my incoming messages. 17 new secure emails, including one from the deputy director requesting my immediate assessment of the weekend's global intelligence briefing, and another from a Senate subcommittee requesting my expert testimony on emerging cyber threats. When I returned to the courtroom, my family was clustered in the hallway, whispering frantically among themselves. They looked up as I approached. "Well?" Maeve inquired anxiously. I communicated with my superior, and I paused, deliberately observing their faces. My aunt, who had invariably introduced me as Astra, who works for the government, doing something with computers. My uncle, who had spent a recent holiday dinner explaining to me the mechanics of a real career. My cousins who had never thought to inquire about the true nature of my profession beyond something in intelligence. As if intelligence were a singular, simplistic function performed by anonymous individuals in cubicles somewhere. He stated, "There is nothing anyone can do. The evidence is overwhelming." The words impacted them like a physical blow. Maeve began to openly weep. Uncle Roland uttered a string of curses in his native tongue. Aunt Corelia resumed her fervent rosary prayers. But I had not yet concluded. "Actually," I stated, raising my voice just enough for all of them to hear. He conveyed something else. They turned to me with a desperate, fragile hope. He said, "Your father's case is being handled at the highest echelons of government, possessing profound national security implications." He said, "The individual overseeing this investigation is someone with unparalleled command authority."
Who?
Roland demanded, his voice hoarse. "Can you establish contact with them?" "I already have." The courtroom doors creaked open, and individuals began to file back inside. As we took our seats, I observed my father searching the gallery until his gaze found my face. He mouthed something that resembled, "Assist me." I mouthed back, "I care for you." The judge re-entered, and the room descended into an absolute hush. After careful consideration of the presented arguments and a thorough review of the submitted evidence, he began, "This court finds that the defendant poses a significant flight risk and an undeniable danger to national security. Bail is therefore denied." My father's shoulder slumped. Behind me, Maeve's sobs became audible. "However," the judge continued, "before we formally adjourn, I have an unusual request. The prosecution has asked that a particular individual be acknowledged for their crucial role in this complex investigation." I felt a chilling sensation form in my stomach. This individual's identity cannot be fully disclosed due to stringent classification requirements, but their exemplary work in identifying, analyzing, and ultimately investigating Mr. Sterling's activities represents the highest caliber of service to our nation. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to formally recognize the lead strategist whose meticulous analysis and expert supervision made this entire case possible." "Proceed." Principal Strategist Astra Sullivan, United States Office of Global Intelligence Operations. The name resonated through the courtroom like a deafening crack. I felt every head pivot towards me, felt my family's bewildered stares like tangible weight. My father's face went ashen, his mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Strategist Sullivan," the judge stated, looking directly at me. "Would you please rise?" My legs felt strangely insubstantial, but I stood. The courtroom was absolutely silent. "Strategist, on behalf of this court and our grateful nation, I extend our profound gratitude for your service and for your unwavering dedication to national security, even under the most personally arduous circumstances." I nodded once, utterly unable to articulate a response. "You may be seated." As I lowered myself back onto the bench, I could feel my family's gazes fixed upon me like searing lasers. Maeve was staring at me as if I had suddenly manifested a second head. Uncle Roland's mouth hung agape in disbelief, and Corelia had dropped her rosary beads, which lay forgotten on the floor. But it was my father's expression that would forever be seared into my memory. Not anger, not betrayal, but something far more devastating. Recognition. The slow, dawning, horrifying realization that the daughter he had consistently dismissed and profoundly underestimated had been the very force that orchestrated his destruction. The judge was speaking again, dictating future dates and procedural instructions. But I was no longer listening. I was observing my father's face as the full, crushing weight of what had transpired settled irrevocably over him. When the proceedings concluded and he was led away, he turned back one final time. Our eyes met across the hushed courtroom, and I witnessed something I had never before seen etched in his features. Respect. A terrible, excruciatingly belated respect. Outside the courthouse, my family encircled me in a bewildered maelstrom of shock and accusation. You're a strategist? Maeve's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, a principal strategist in global intelligence operations. You investigated your own father. My division flagged his activities. I formally recused myself from direct involvement once his identity became known. Uncle Roland was shaking his head, his face etched with disbelief. You've been concealing the truth from us for years. I have been safeguarding classified information. There is a critical distinction. You allowed us to believe you were inconsequential, Maeve shouted, her voice breaking. You permitted us to think you were some low level. You never inquired, I stated quietly, my voice calm but firm. In 15 years, none of you ever bothered to ask what I truly did. You assumed, and I permitted your assumptions, because it was less painful than witnessing your indifference to the genuine answer. Aunt Corelia was openly weeping now. You could have intervened for him. You could have issued a warning. No, I stated firmly, my resolve unshakable. I could not have. That would have constituted treason. He is your father. And I am a United States officer of global intelligence. My oath is sworn to the Constitution, not to family members who engage in espionage. The words hung in the charged air like a solemn condemnation. Maeve wiped tears from her eyes. So what transpires now? You simply return to your vital position and pretend this tragic event never occurred. I looked at her, at all of them, and felt the immense weight of 34 years of being underestimated finally lift from my shoulders. No, I stated, my voice resonating with quiet power. Now I return to my operational duties and continue serving my country precisely as I always have, precisely as I always will. I turned and walked away from them, then walked away from the family that had never possessed the clarity of vision to truly comprehend who I was. As I reached my rental vehicle, I heard Maeve's voice call out hesitantly behind me. Astra, wait. I paused and turned. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming freely down her face. We didn't know. I understand, I stated. But that is not my burden to bear. On the flight back to Maryland, I reflected on my father's face in that stark courtroom. The profound shock, the sudden, devastating recognition, the terrible, belated understanding that his disappointing daughter had been living a life he couldn't even fathom while he had been carelessly peddling state secrets to foreign entities. There was no satisfaction in it, no sense of triumph, just the quiet, aching knowledge that sometimes the individuals who claim to love us perceive us least clearly of all. My secure comm device vibrated with an incoming message from an untraceable number. Somehow, my father had managed to gain access to a temporary device within detention. I was blind. It read, I am truly sorry. So, deeply sorry. I stared at the message for a protracted moment. Then I typed back, acknowledged. It was not an act of forgiveness. It was not a gesture of reconciliation. It was simply validation, the profound acknowledgement I had been awaiting for my entire existence, arriving 2 decades too late and costing us both everything. But as the aircraft ascended, carrying me back to my true life, to my real work, to the place where people understood precisely who I was and what I was capable of, I comprehended something critically important. I no longer required their recognition. I had, in fact, never truly needed it. I had always been exactly who I was destined to be. They simply had not been looking with sufficient clarity to perceive it.